American cities dedicate somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of their land to streets, parking lots, and garages. Actually think about that. We built these cities where cars take up more room than people. And it gets worse because the average car sits parked nearly 95% of the time, which means we're wasting the most expensive real estate on Earth, storing metal boxes that barely move. Now, look at what Oslo did. Between 2017 and 2019, they removed over 700 parking spaces from the city center. And before you say anything about how that killed the city, those spaces turned into bike lanes, little parks where people actually hang out, and outdoor seating where you can sit without breathing exhaust. The whole vibe of downtown changed. Here's what cracks me up though. People hear car free and immediately freak out about ambulances not being able to reach hospitals or disabled people being trapped at home. That's not what happens. Oslo still lets emergency vehicles, buses, trams, taxis, and drivers with disabilities go anywhere they need. Ghent allows delivery trucks between 7 and 11 in the morning. So stores get their stuff without trucks blocking streets during lunch rush. Venice literally runs everything by water because the whole city is islands and bridges. So wheeled vehicles can't even work there. What car-free really means is just putting people first instead of cars. Those parking spaces become places where you can grab coffee and actually talk without traffic drowning you out. Those massive 6-lane roads shrinks to 2 lanes for buses, and the extra space becomes bike paths and sidewalks where you're not dodging people. And Oslo's car traffic dropped 28% after they removed parking. You'd think that hurt, right? Wrong. Pedestrian traffic jumped 14%, and people hanging out in public spaces went up 43%. People actually started using their city instead of just rushing through it. Examples: Oslo, Venice, Ghent. So here's how Oslo made this work. They started small in 2017 with 6 pilot programs removing around 300 parking spaces. Business owners absolutely lost it, saying this would destroy everything. Drivers protested like the government was stealing their freedom. The pushback was wild. But then, within 1 year, foot traffic went up 10%. Streets that used to reek of exhaust became places people wanted to be. And guess what? 0 pedestrian or cyclist deaths in 2020. 0. The results were so obvious that Oslo expanded to 700 removed spots by 2019. They proved you can't argue with data. The smart part was Oslo upgraded their public transit at the same time. They didn't just yank parking and tell people to figure it out. They built protected bike lanes, widened sidewalks, and created actual spaces worth spending time in. Ghent went completely different. In April 2017, they did their entire circulation plan in 1 weekend. They split the center into 6 zones, where you literally can't drive from one to another without using the ring road. One huge pedestrian zone expanded by 128% overnight. Streets that used to be packed with cars became places where kids could play safely. The whole thing cost just 5 million euros. And it turns out 40% of traffic in Ghent Center was people just cutting through with no reason to be there. They were using downtown as a shortcut instead of the ring road that was built for it. The new plan killed that completely, while residents and deliveries could still get where they needed. Between 11 and 6, the pedestrian streets are totally car-free. Even cyclists have to walk their bikes. Doing it all in 1 weekend actually helped because everyone knew the rules immediately instead of months of confusion. Ghent hit their cycling goal for 2030 back in 2019, 11 years early. Transportation habits can flip fast when you give people real options. And of course, Venice is the wild one because they've been car-free for centuries. Because the city's literally built across 118 islands connected by 400 bridges, which means cars physically can't work in the historic center. 70,000 people live their entire lives without owning cars. And it's not some tiny village, it's a functioning city. And economically, Venice has been thriving as a car-free city for literally centuries. The tourism industry alone proves people will absolutely visit places without driving there. If anything, the car-free nature is a huge part of what makes it attractive. Nobody's visiting Venice wishing they could drive through those alleys. Traffic and economic results. But here's where it gets wild. A study of over 100 cities found pedestrian streets had retail sales jump 49%. 49%! Research across Spanish cities backed this up. Even temporary closures work. In Los Angeles, during Ciclavia events, 128 businesses made over $52,000 extra dollars in one car-free day. That should tell you something about parking and profit being backwards. The reason businesses fight this is they're totally wrong about customers. People walking or biking visit way more often than drivers who park once and bail. Copenhagen makes 400,000 euros per kilometer of bike lane, counting lower transport costs, cheaper health care, fewer accidents. Dublin's Capel Street revenue jumped 19% to almost $6 million after going car-free, with 90% wanting it permanent. Property values rise when cars disappear. Cities ranking highest for livability prioritize people. The economic argument falls apart when prime land stores idle vehicles making zero money. Environmental stuff's dramatic too. Oslo cut carbon emissions 35% since 2012. In 2019, they hit WHO targets for 10 months. Kids breathe cleaner air and people get fewer respiratory problems. Challenges they faced. Look, the opposition doesn't mess around in any of these places. When Oslo's Progressive Coalition proposed making the city center car-free in 2015, business owners worried they'd lose customers who drove in. The backlash was so intense, the government shifted from a full car ban to gradually removing parking spots. Local journalist Jarl Abo even started an online newspaper called Yes to the Car in Oslo to oppose the changes, calling it a war against cars. But Oslo's gradual approach actually helped manage the opposition. Venice faces totally different challenges because the car-free thing is centuries old. The city attracts around 20 million visitors each year, with more than 50,000 people entering on peak days, even as the resident population has fallen to just over 49,000. This imbalance puts extraordinary strain on Venice's infrastructure, lagoon ecosystem, and cultural heritage. The city government struggles with how to maintain services through boat systems that cost way more than regular trucks. Every renovation becomes incredibly expensive because you can't just drive materials to the site. Ghent's deputy mayor got death threats, like actual death threats, over parking. People were massively polarized, convinced this would destroy their local economy. Lessons learned. The main thing is you have to build alternatives before removing cars. Oslo made significant improvements to public transportation alongside removing parking, ensuring people could reach the centers without their cars. Cities that yank parking first and promise transit later get angry residents. Gradual pilots work better politically when you need to build evidence. Oslo used 6 pilot trials to demonstrate positive results before expanding. Ghent's weekend blitz worked because they spent 2.5 years conducting stakeholder participation before implementation, when the actual figure was 42%. Business owners in one study perceived 12% of shoppers arrived by bicycle when the actual figure was 42%, showing how badly retailers misjudge their customers. Presenting accurate data addresses business concerns way better than theory. Research shows parking availability influences travel decisions, but reduced parking with strong alternatives maintains visits while shifting arrival methods. Early anger almost always transforms. Ghent's polarization decreased significantly after evaluation as reality replaced fear. Over 50% of Oslo inhabitants are now open to a city center with fewer vehicles, and that share keeps increasing. Could American cities do this? The obstacles are legit. 90% of housing in major metros is in car-dependent suburbs. Walkable neighborhoods have essentially been banned through zoning. But American cities have already proven this works. San Francisco's JFK Drive stayed closed after the pandemic, with 60% of voters supporting it. Santa Monica's 3rd Street Promenade, Miami's Lincoln Road, and Boulder's Pearl Street have thrived for decades. Cul-de-sac Tempe opened in 2023, proving the model works even in Arizona's car-dependent sprawl. So what could your city do? Start by identifying areas with high pedestrian traffic, strong transit, and dense development. Downtown commercial districts where people already walk are perfect. Historic neighborhoods that predate cars often have the right bones. Entertainment districts could go pedestrian during peak hours. Run a pilot program for 3 to 6 months. Close a few blocks on weekends. Measure foot traffic. Talk to businesses about sales and survey residents. Build evidence before critics claim you're destroying the economy. Allow delivery trucks during morning hours, like Ghent does. Get business owners involved from day one. Make sure disabled access improves with wider sidewalks and better transit. Fund it through the American Rescue Plan funds and Safe Streets for All programs. The federal money is sitting there. Follow Houston's 7-block pedestrian promenade model, or how Detroit invested $20 million in its 27.5-mile car-free Joe Louis Greenway. Your city could designate one downtown street for pedestrians only. Add outdoor seating, bike racks, trees, benches. Make it feel like a European plaza. Washington, D.C. has identified 7th Street, M Street, and 18th Street as perfect candidates. They just need political will. Start small like Oslo did. Remove parking on one block. When businesses see sales go up, when property values rise, and when air gets cleaner, and pedestrian deaths drop to 0, expand to the next block. Build momentum through evidence. Copenhagen's network took decades. Vienna and Copenhagen top livability rankings through sustained commitment. Your city could do this street by street, building places people want to live instead of just drive through. Look, we've built a century building cities for cars instead of people, and it's made us sicker, poorer, and more isolated. But Oslo, Ghent, and even American cities have proven you can undo this damage faster than anyone thinks. The question isn't whether car-free works. The data settled that. The question is whether your city has the guts to put people first. If this changed how you think about what American cities could do, share it with people interested in transforming communities. Subscribe for more deep dives into policies that could make cities healthier and more livable.